So we're looking good.
All right.
10 seconds to release.
Right here.
50,000 feet, that makes it 40. That looks good.
Coming on the pickle button.
We're looking good. Clear to pickle.
On the pickle button is swinging right and left.
Yeah.
Take what I can right here.
Roger
2,
that.
1.
Lasers off.
Bomb's gone. Bomb's gone.
Roger that. Right turn.
Coming right. Coming right.
$28 seconds.
Roger.
Waiting for 20 seconds. 20 seconds time to go. Laser coming on.
With me to the south.
Laser coming on.
Got the laser on.
Holding the track and steady on the far corner.
Roger.
Call sign calling
Looking
back.
good.
10 seconds.
Shell 4-1, I've got a tally
5,
though. I think that's wedged to the south.
4, 3, 2,
My position
1.
for about 10
Good
miles.
B impact.
Oh, yes!
Coming right.
Plus 19. Spike base plus 19.
Lasers off.
Lasers off. Coming right.
We destroyed that thing bigger than Dallas.
Okay, coming right. Heading to.
Base plus 19.
Roger that. Sequence, yeah.
Once you got within 80 to 100 miles of Baghdad, you could see the exceptional amount of AAA. It was at least 5 to 10 times worse than my most vivid imagination. We knew 8 airplanes were going in at the same time, and every one of us thought that probably less than half would come out. We each prepared in our own way mentally. We tightened down our straps, zipped up our zippers, tightened our chin straps, kind of gritted our teeth and pressed on.
War in the air changed in the Persian Gulf. For the first time, planners could select a target and with confidence have a single jet destroy it in one pass. With accuracy and precision never before associated with the aerial strike, aviators surgically eliminated critical enemy assets, one by one by one. Once a mission for the B-52, the strike job now falls to the strike fighter. Designed to penetrate enemy airspace, find the target and destroy it, high-speed, deep interdiction is the striker's stock in trade. 3 aircraft fly this demanding mission: the F-111F Aardvark, the F-117 Stealth, and the F-15E Strike Eagle.
A strike mission is to go behind the enemy's lines and very simply to deny him the warfighting capability before it can be brought to bear against our own forces. In the F-117, we did just that. We slipped well behind the enemy's lines, right into the middle of the enemy camp, and denied him his ability, whether it was to communicate with his own troops or to gather the information so that decisions could be made and the missiles launched.
As far as interdiction goes, we're talking about long range across the border. And by that, typically up to 200 miles, or 200 to 600 miles, in fact, on the opposite side of the border for interdiction-type targets. The other concept involved with that would be the type target that we're going after. And primarily for the F-15E, we think in terms of airfields, bridges, highways, things like that are stationary type targets that we can get fairly good intel for prior to taking off.
Our primary mission is bombs on target, on time. You have one chance to do that, so everything you do, all your planning goes into the fact that you're going to find a target the first time. You're going to get in there, you're going to get the bombs off the way you want to, they're going to hit the target, and as soon as you do that, your primary concern is get out of there, out of Dodge as fast as you can, one pass haul ass, and go home.
The F-15E, the F-111, and the F-117, we all want to use that element of surprise to get to a target and get back out. The F-117 is not going to do anything at low altitude, and they're not going to do anything at any real great speed. They're going to use the advantage of stealthiness to get them into target areas and get them out without anybody being able to see them. We don't have a capability for stealth, per se, so we have to create that capability by going in at low altitude and trying to stay below radar coverages to get in and get out of a target area.
Our number one defense is stealth, and in fact we rely on it, and we go in there depending on the stealthiness of the aircraft to give us the ability to concentrate on weapon delivery, so that, if you will, we do not disregard the defenses. We just depend on our aircraft to protect us against most of them, so that when we're committed to the bomb run, we are doing just that, the bomb run.
We have the capability of self-protection, which the F-111 and the F-117 don't have. So in that respect, we're kind of ideal. And we also have the targeting pod and the FLIR, which kind of turns night into day. So we have a capability to find some targets that other airplanes may not be able to find. The 117 is obviously specialized in using the FLIR to find a target, and the 111 is specialized in TFR. So we're kind of a combination of that, and we're a lot more flexible because of that.
All strikers are not created equal, an advantage to planners when it comes to matching a target with the capabilities of an aircraft. For deep interdiction, a favorite during the Gulf War was the F-111F. With both internal and external munitions racks, excellent speed, and low-level night terrain-following radar, the Aardvark delivered the largest payloads of the strike fighters, well behind enemy lines, crossing hostile territory 200 feet above the ground.
F-111 is a huge airplane, and I think most people that see it for the first time are amazed at its enormous size. It weighs over 50,000 pounds just sitting on the ramp. And it can carry a lot of gas. We carry 34,000 pounds of fuel inside the airplane with nothing in tanks. So it's a big airplane. And when you first approach it, I think it strikes you as being warlike and complex. It has full-length slats that go all the way across the wing, full-length flaps, very strong, large landing gear, and things hanging all over the airplane. It just looks like a beast, really. It's got an F designation for fighter, but it's really not a fighter, and that's probably where most of the confusion comes in. It's a long-range light attack airplane. And what we do with the F-111F is go deep behind enemy lines, carrying precision-guided bombs to strike high-value targets with incredible accuracy. As you crawl up into the cockpit, ladder on each side, clamshell-type canopies that are counterweighted, so they come right open for you. And then the cockpit is small for such a large airplane. You sort of have to shoehorn yourself into it sometimes. But it's a well-laid-out cockpit. There's flight controls on both sides, one set for the pilot, one set for the Wizzo. Each guy's got a stick, each guy has a set of throttles and flight instruments. The right side is predominantly where the bombing and navigation equipment sits, and there's all kinds of displays for navigational status, where we are, where we're going, weapons, arming status, and of course the attack radar, and the controls for the PaveTac infrared set are on that side as well. To move the wings, this is sort of interesting. There's a handle above the pilot's left arm mounted on the sidewall of the canopy of the cockpit, and he pulls the handle back to move the wings back and pushes it forward to move the wings forward. It's really as simple as that. And he can set the wings anywhere from 16 degrees forward all the way to 72.5 degrees back, which really turns the airplane into just a dart. The F-111 has an ejectable crew capsule. In the event that we have to get out of the aircraft, we don't have ejection seats. In fact, we don't even wear parachutes. The entire cockpit leaves the airplane via a large rocket motor. A 70-foot parachute comes out, and we float down to safety in that thing. And the F-111 has really a kind of an unusual intake system. The cones fly it in and out of the engines to sort of massage the airflow going in there. Since the airplane's capable of flying at low speeds and very, very high speeds, the engines need sort of a more standard airflow in order to operate. So these things sort of move in and out. We've got the jet cranked up. We'll start up the engines and cook up the avionics and get the INS going. And there's a fair bit of mission data typing that goes on. We've got to type in bombing information and coordinates of all of our turn points. And so there's a fair amount of bookkeeping that goes on. Once we get out into the arming area, though, near the end of the runway, then there's some other things that we do. And while the arming crews are pulling the pins on our bombs and arming up the weapons, we pull the pins out of the ejection system to ensure that that's ready for us should we need it. And we also bore sight our pave tack system at this time. We have little targets that are precisely surveyed and placed near the arming area. And we actually bring the pod out of the aircraft, rotate it down, and we scope out on these little targets and make sure that we have an accurate installation of the pave tack pod, and we can correct for some of those errors at this time. When the Wizzo's done queuing up the pod, he'll rotate that back up into the weapons bay, and when everybody's ready to go, we'll taxi the formation onto the runway. We do a few checks as we taxi onto the runway. We ensure the aircraft's in the correct configuration. Then we're looking for a run-up signal from the lead aircraft. We see the run-up signal, a finger in the air, sort of in a circular motion, and we run up the engines, lighten the afterburners one at a time to ensure that they do light correctly and that there's no blowout. Once we have two full afterburners going, we've got over 25,000 pounds of thrust now out of each engine, and the airplane wants to leap into the air. Holding the brakes can be kind of tough at this time. Lead aircraft rolls. We're looking for a 10-second hack. 10 seconds later, we're off the brakes now, and the jet's running.
While the F-111F flies a low-level, high-speed profile, the F-117 relies on its stealth to evade enemy defenses. What would be foolish in other jets is practical in the F-117. It will fly straight and level over the target, carefully guiding its munitions, flying with the knowledge that it is invisible to ground controllers and radar-guided missiles. Indeed, planners will task the stealth to the most heavily defended targets, the very success of the mission reliant on its low observability.
The F-117 was a black program. It was developed in secrecy, it was built in secrecy, and it was flown here in secrecy. Stealth technology is a fairly fragile item. It could be exploited fairly easily. So to this day, when we go to air shows, the aircraft is kept behind ropes, and you're not allowed to go up and touch and feel the airframe itself.
Since the shape of the aircraft is our main defense, our stealthiness, the shape being what deflects the radar in all directions except straight back to the sender, and then again the skin being the part that absorbs what is not deflected. So we spend a great deal of time making sure that the outside of the aircraft is in pristine condition, that the skin is just right. I do start at the left-hand side of the aircraft at the bottom of the ladder and walk my way around, taking a good hard look at the outside, because again the shell and the makeup of the outside of our airplane is our stealthy defense, and taking a good hard look at the airplane from the left front side, walking around to the pitot tubes. I'll call them pitot tubes, the booms up front. We have a quad redundant system and a very, very accurate and precise system, and I take a good look at all of those. And while I'm there, a cursory look, if you will, at the infrared displays or the infrared sensors on both the top, front, and the bottom of the aircraft to to make sure, at least from the outside, that they look normal and everything's fine on those. Back up underneath, we take a look again with a flashlight up underneath for some of the systems inside there, and walk along the back of the aircraft. And at about that time, the crew chief pulls the drag chute pin, and we take a look at that. And then I walk back far enough to take a good look up and down the both of our tail fins and up along the spine of the aircraft, looking through the tails to see that the door is shut for the drag chute and that everything looks kosher along the top. But we have a roof in this cockpit, if you will, because it's not entirely glass-filled, sitting with a roof and the support for the canopy up above us, and it's a heavy canopy, and then the glass on our sides and in front of us. The systems wrap around us as a normal, new, modern fighter cockpit, with the computer starting on the left-hand side and then wrapping all the way around with cathode ray tubes. The visibility that the Stealth has from the cockpit is exactly what we need. We need to have enough visibility to take off, land, find the tanker, refuel, and look in front of us to basically to get to the target area. So the visibility that we have is actually quite adequate. Again, since we fly at night, we don't expect other people to see us, so we're not really looking for them either. Once the aircraft is started, it's a nice, quiet engine sound inside. There's really a comfortable cockpit environment as far as air conditioning and sound. Very pleasant. There are quite a few different light intensity controls to make sure that everything we want to see, we can see, and for that matter, everything we don't want to see, we don't. Since our mission is at night, we spend a lot of time continually turning all these particular displays down because we just don't need a lot of at night to see. The Blackjet is an agile aircraft. It is not a dogfighting machine and was not created to do that, and was not created for many of the roles that our other fighters have been. Again, to be stealthy, we've had to give up certain characteristics, and it is an agile aircraft, but not a dogfighter. Again, we're a strike aircraft to go in there and be invisible and be accurate. And to do that, I would characterize it as a very stable aircraft and a very accurate aircraft, and for that matter, an easy airplane to fly. We had just developed techniques so that we wouldn't have to talk to anybody, and we could get up, get to the tankers, get our gasoline, get to the border, and get to the target without ever having to talk to anyone and without ever emitting any kind of energy, be it radio, radar, whatever. We just did everything silent and never talked. It's a great feeling of pride, one of strength to be sitting at the end of the runway and to look on either side and see 8 or 12 odd F-117s lined up in the darkness with the silhouettes there along the end of the runway, the arming ramp, and see everybody on time, no one having to say a word, everyone knowing exactly when to taxi and exactly when to take off, and everyone being very precise and very professional. I was very proud of all the guys over there. They did a wonderful job. Normally take off as single ship. Since we do fly only at night, and since our airplanes are painted black, they're very difficult for us to see each other. So we'll take off singly and then and fly out towards a tanker. During the war, we would take off just about 20 or 30 seconds apart, and then fly out together, if you will, rejoin in the air using our sensors on board, and then fly to the tankers as pairs.
AAA's we consider our biggest threat because of our stealth technology allows us to defeat the SAMs or somewhat negate the SAMs. Where other units can't even go, we do go nightly. We can do that by avoiding the AAA where other units can't even get in there. The SAMs would drive them down into the AAA. Although we spend a considerable time in the AAA envelope, without the warning, without the notice that we're coming, we can usually be on our way out before the shooting actually starts, and that gives us a distinct advantage. We can rapidly outclimb it or get away from it, and we don't have to face it on the way in, where most of the problems lie.
The F-15E Strike Eagle. the two-seat variant of the F-15C fighter. The F-15E gives planners a deep strike aircraft that can defend itself in an air-to-air engagement. Capable of extraordinary payloads, night low-level flight, and high-speed maneuvering, the F-15E carries sophisticated imaging, targeting, and weapons guidance systems, making it a formidable foe in air-to-air and air-to-ground combat.
The Strike Eagle F-15E is basically, the McDonnell took the F-15 airframe, and what they've done is they've improved everything. They've made it in 2 cockpits. They've given it a brand new radar with an air-to-ground mapping capability, which is the best in the world right now. It's a lot stronger for air-to-air radar purposes as well. It's also got the Lantern system, which includes a nav pod for terrain following radar and looking forward in the FLIR, as well as a targeting pod. There's kind of a worn-out cliche that we've used. It's the front seater rows the boat, back seater shoots the ducks. And what that means is the front seater is responsible for flying and navigating, getting to where we need to go. The back seater is working all the sensors, whether that be the air-to-air radar, the air-to-ground radar, the targeting pod, trying to find the target, or checking 6, make sure we don't get unobserved shots or aircraft rolling in us. So in that respect, having 2 people is great because we can cover all aspects of what you need to do.
Okay.
We're a dual role. Our primary mission, because of our capabilities, is night interdiction as well as day. And during the war, we ended up doing a lot of scud hunting, which was actually a lot of combat air patrol. And as well, we also have an air-to-air secondary role. So the F-15C model is primary air-to-air, whereas we're primarily air-to-ground with a secondary air-to-air role.
If the airplane is set up for air-to-ground, which in this airplane you have to select the air-to-ground master mode to drop bombs off the airplane, and if the WISO is working the air-to-ground radar to use the APG-70 to make a picture of the target we're going to hit, then if I select the air-to-air master mode by using some of the weapon switchology, it transfers the radar from that air-to-ground operation back into air-to-air operation, and it energizes all the circuits in the airplane so that I can shoot air-to-air missiles or fire the gun. The Lantern gives me the terrain following radar, a infrared picture system that allows me to see at night. And by see at night, the HUD in the front of our airplane is a 14 by 28 degree HUD, and the nav FLIR portion of the Lantern system puts a daytime presentation based off of infrared signature into that HUD for me. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm actually looking out and seeing almost the same picture that I would see if the sun was up. Target pod half of the Lantern system gives me a laser designator and a magnified target designation system.
Hey, Crockett, I still have negative contact on you.
30 South Delaware.
Say call sign again. Go standby search.
What I use to update the INS for the Lantern would be the targeting pod half of the Lantern system. And what I can do with it is pull mensurated coordinates off of a bridge or something I'm going to fly by en route to a target. And as I fly by that target, I can put the targeting pod cursors onto that bridge and then just through a matter of a couple of switches, tell the airplane that that is appointed at exactly this set of coordinates that I loaded into the INS before I took off. And now it recognizes that, matches it to that set of coordinates in the INS, and updates the aircraft's position into the INS and the mission navigator. We do carry precision munitions, primarily the GBU-10, GBU-12. We're working on capabilities toward GBU-24. We are carrying some GBU-15s here at Nellis. We have quite a capability for precision munitions. Typical load during Desert Storm for us, we always carry tanks, which was something that we hadn't really planned on before we went to Desert Storm. So either our jets had a centerline tank or 2 wing tanks, and on some nights we carried all 3.
As I popped and started climbing up to deliver my bombs above the airfield, they still had the runway lights on, the approach lights were on. They had no clue that we were going to be there. Now, once my bombs hit, it all changed. It was like someone had turned the switch on, and there was just thousands of bullets, missiles coming up, and it was the biggest light show I'd ever seen. And being over top of it is not probably one of the most fun places to be.
The Combat Run. For strikers, it is one of the longest missions over hostile territory in military aviation. It is a mission that challenges the best of pilots. Physical endurance, precision bombing, evading hostile threats, aerial tanking, and returning safely home.
Find the tankers absolutely radio silent, and go onto the tankers in preordained numbers and order, and up to the tanker. Once flying up to it, I would spit the wingman off, and he was cleared off to the wing of the tanker. On the Stealth, we have an apex light which will shine down onto the refueling receptacle, so that, and we will turn it up just bright enough for the boomer to be able to find the back of the aircraft and get some kind of perspective on the top of the airplane.
As we go to a pre-contact position and the boom operator clears us in towards contact, the pilot flies the airplane underneath the tanker, and most guys will try and ensure that their vector is parallel to the tanker. In other words, they're not flying up the boom because it's very difficult to judge overtake and distance, but they'll fly rather underneath the boom with their fuselage parallel to the tankers so that they're not up into the tanker. Once they got the height nailed, they're at the correct distance or displacement below the tanker, they just drive straight forward. And they continue to drive straight forward until they get into position. We would typically take fuel from a tanker and then cross the border at medium altitude. Depending on the threat, we may let down to as low as 200 feet and skim across the surface of the Earth at 200 feet and very high speed into the target area. This makes it hard for the radars to see us. We deliver the weapons, sometimes one at a time, so we may be in the target area for quite some time delivering these smart bombs. one bomb per target, and then we skim out the same way we came in, usually taking fuel after we cross the border to make it back to our home base. A typical interdiction mission for the 111 might be 5 to 6 hours long. The laser-guided bombs that we drop are just general-purpose bombs, no different than a 2,000 or 500-pound dumb bomb. And they put a guidance kit on them, and the guidance kit consists of these large fins on the back of the weapon which pop out in flight to give it almost wings in the back, and a steerable nose unit that has a laser seeker head which reads the laser energy, and a smaller set of control fins. And these control fins actually move to keep the bomb, based on inputs from the computer unit, to keep the bomb on the correct flight path as it approaches the target. Now, obviously, the bomb has no motor, so the only energy it has to get to the target is the energy that the aircraft gives it. And that can be in the form of gravity as we drop it from a relatively high altitude, or from a low altitude delivery, we can actually throw the bomb or toss the bomb towards the target, giving it enough energy to correct its flight path as it makes it.
The meat of our practice missions is target recognition using our infrared sensor displays. Because, again, a visual picture, a visual presentation is very, very different from an infrared presentation. And since we fly at night, everything we do will be infrared. And let's say, for example, a building that's painted white during the daytime, if it's, depending on how much heat it gives off at night, can be a completely different color depending on what we're using on our sensor, whether, let's say, black is hot or white is hot, depending upon, again, the type of display we choose. So what we do during our practice is understand the difference between a visual and infrared picture.
Screen the triangle. My target area.
Laser off. Laser off.
My target area is under the smoke. I'm picking this building here. 29 seconds left to go. There's all sorts of debris down there.
20 seconds.
22 seconds. 20. Looking for 15. There's my building.
15. Laser on.
Laser's on. Center of the building.
Okay. 10 seconds. Missile launch.
8.
From 1. Base spike. Base plus 20. Chaff.
Impact. Like you wouldn't believe.
Shack. Shit on. Good to go.
Lasers on. Spike base plus 17. Okay, we got AAA blowing up below us.
Okay.
Okay, you're outside now.
I'm outside. Okay, I see the laser on. Continue, we got a cartel. Find your Dimpy, we're about to get rid of the bomb.
I've got 5 seconds. Laser is on. Bombs are gone.
The tough part is approaching the target and trying to pick out your building or your specific impact point from this mass of blips on the radar. The Wizzo's working very, very hard to do this, and once he's done that, he'll use the PaveTac system to further refine it. Once he can acquire it with the PaveTac infrared, it's really like looking at a TV. I mean, it essentially turns nighttime into daytime for us, and he'll place the laser on the target and turn it on. And so now a laser beam reflected back to the aircraft is updating the navigational systems of the airplane, and the pilot gets very, very precise steering cues, which he follows and takes him exactly to the point of release for the weapon. When he fires a laser at a target or at any point he wants to update, the laser energy is then reflected back to the PaveTac pod where it's interpreted and converted into range information. And this range and angle information then provide very accurate updates to the navigation and the bombing systems of the aircraft. So we can use PaveTac to very accurately find our targets and update our navigational systems. And we can also use the PaveTac laser to designate or steer laser-guided bombs.
Let's get away from the AAA.
You can start your turn now.
Looking for threats to the right, and our heading is going to be about 250-ish.
Sometimes, depending on the bomb run, we'll actually increase the lights on board just inside the cockpit so we can take a real good look at the photos that we're carrying to make sure that what we're seeing on our sensor display is, in fact, what we're looking at on our pictures.
Center it up
up if you can.
Center the steering. It's coming right. 15 seconds. Coming back left now. Sloppy.
Yeah, I know.
Sloppy. Coming on the pickle button.
Clear to pickle.
Clear to pickle. AAA is still below us.
calling buddy spike.
3, 2, 1. Bomb's gone. Bomb's gone.
Roger
bomb's
that.
Gone. Chapping.
Oh, somebody blew up my dippy.
All right, move it.
I'm gonna try. Fire the laser, see if it gets there.
Roger, you got 24 seconds.
Oh, somebody hit that one too.
Got to keep moving it.
Picture clean.
Yeah.
1 coming up on the heading.
I don't think it's gonna get there.
All 10 seconds. Keep firing it.
Too late now.
Yep. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Impact.
Okay. A little long in the same area.
Base plus 20.
All right.
We call it a wheel, and basically all you're doing is you're setting up between 15 and 20,000 feet above, maybe a 5-mile radius around it. And again, we work in 2 ships in this case, and the first guy would roll in, drop his laser guided bomb, pull off, and guide it into the target, and then he would come off, and the second guy would come in. And we had to do buddy lasing because a limited number of targeting pods, 1 per 2 ship. So after the first guy with the targeting pod dropped his, he'd get into the wheel. The other guy would drop his bomb somewhere in the ballpark, and then after his bomb came off, the guy was in the wheel arcing the target would guide the bomb in, which was called buddy lasing. So, and that we were able to get 16 GBU-12s off instead of just having 8 per jet, so it worked out well.
Most of the pilot's attention was inside the cockpit, working on his sensors and delivering his bomb and his run-in. When you did have the opportunity to look out, it was surprising how little AAA fire there was on your run into the target. As soon as the bomb hit the ground, however, every gun they had would start firing at you, normally firing at either the sound or their guess as to where you were. Mostly seemed to be barrage-type fire and was predominantly behind the aircraft.
The Iraqis didn't know we were there until the first bombs went off, and so it was extremely important that when there were a lot of people going across the target, that we had to be on time so that we weren't setting the anti-aircraft fire off for our buddies coming in on perhaps a simultaneous attack in the same area. So yeah, there were quite a few attacks where the bombs would set the light switch off, so to speak, and the anti-aircraft fire would fill up the sky very quickly thereafter, and we'd just have to fly through it on the way out. On our target run, we're committed into a rather mundane G environment. We're committing ourselves to the accurate delivery, so therefore we'll kind of ride the bomb run out in a fairly smooth manner to, again, increase the accuracy of the weapon. So it's not the standard jink in, jink out that I was used to flying the F-16. The stealth capabilities of the aircraft allow us to do just that. Because we're not worried as much about the weapon guidance on us, we're flying a smoother profile and helping to drop a more accurate weapon. We must maintain guidance of the weapon during that time, so a great deal of what we practice is making sure that during entry into the area and exit from the area, while the weapon is being guided, we're being very accurate with the guidance on board. We wrap the rest of our ingress and egress profile around the guidance of the weapon.
Over the past couple of weeks, the threats have been dying, or not dying, but have reduced considerably until tonight. For some reason tonight there must have been a half-price sale on 37mm ammunition or 57mm, because tonight the threats were back up. Baghdad's been pretty quiet for about 2 weeks. Tonight it lit up all over again. It wasn't nearly as bad as the first night, mainly due to the sector fire tonight. The first night, the entire city and everything near Baghdad was constant fire. You could almost walk on the bullets. Tonight it was that way, but in sectors. You could tell where a bomb would go off, the entire sector would just be engulfed in tracers. Fortunately, most of them went off as we were leaving. We drop our bomb and set it off. But tonight, in small areas, was almost as bad as the first night.
I was assigned to go against a large hangar on an airfield, and we in fact found the target, launched a precision-guided munitions from a rather long standoff range, and it went right through the side door of the hangar and destroyed the hangar. We saw some air-to-air, and we saw some ground-to-air, and we saw a lot of AAA, and we worked for our money last night.
The Strike Fighter, a powerful aircraft with sophisticated navigation, imaging, and weapons guidance systems. One bomb, one pass, one target. An imposing deterrent that has changed the future of war in the air.
There are places in that country where in the middle of a city, a handful of bridges are missing. And that's the only real damage you could see to the entire city. And that was exactly what we went in to take out.
We were in a trail, 22 ship at night, 300 to 500 feet, train following in groups of 4 is what we had, all in basically 2 to 6 mile trail. So it was a long train, and each 2 to 4 ship had specific targets to hit that first night. So that was a case of where we went in as fast as we could to make our time on target, obviously. And once we got there, got our bombs off, then we were pushing the Mach to get out of there. And again, that was all low altitude. And again, that was the first night, and we heard a lot of threats out there. A couple Iraqi jets hit the ground trying to convert us at night. So again, the nighttime, never thought I'd say this, but during the war, nighttime's good.
Okay, you're 15 seconds.
Okay, I'm going to count you down.
Okay, you count me.
69,000.
7 seconds.
Okay, just wait till my call.
I'll get your call.
62. 59.
Shell friendly traffic 20014 tracking west. Base plus 17 also traffic 220 10 miles tracking north.
Ready.
They're gone.
I heard on one of the news shows they were talking about killing these hardened aircraft shelters, which was one of our targets. And the gentleman talking on the show, a so-called expert, said that the way you kill one of these things is you take a lot of airplanes and you put every bomb the airplane can carry on this shelter. And we found that not to be true. We found that you go out there with an F-111 and you put one bomb on that shelter and you're going to kill it. And the first night of the war, we took 4 bombs against 4 shelters, and 1 bomb malfunctioned and the other 3 were direct hits, and we killed 3 shelters with 1 airplane. And that was 1 airplane part of a package. And we found that we were able to, with a package of F-111s, go to an airfield and virtually destroy every shelter on the airfield in a matter of nights.
Good flying weather for the Black Jet is absolutely as dark as it possibly can be. Just a cool, nice night with no moon. The first few nights, of course, we didn't know that the airplane would work and had expected to take some losses. And it was only after the first 2, 3, 4 nights of the war, when everyone was coming back and no one was hit, that we began to feel like this technology works. So the standard comment was that, the damn thing works. Some of those who'd studied a little military history began to scratch their heads and say, well, there are different kinds of changes in warfare, evolutionary changes versus revolutionary changes, and we may have just witnessed a revolutionary change in warfare. The combination of stealth and precision-guided weaponry gives the battlefield commander the opportunity for his forces to roam the enemy's camp at night undetected and unhindered, and destroy the target of the commander's choosing with over 80, sometimes 90% chance of success to the second. I mean, we would fly these missions for the bombs to be dropped to the second on particular targets, and that our battlefield commanders have never, ever in the history of warfare had that capability, and we do now, and it is an extraordinary and revolutionary change in warfare, and we need to know that we have crossed this particular hurdle, and we will never, ever, ever go back.